Rhythm and blues.
We need to make sure that we're helping them now and making sure that they stay strong so that whether they work at McDonald or some other place, they have the tools and the passions that they need to be successful. But we've got to do it in an authentic way. That's the struggle that most brands have, is finding that authenticity and doing it in a way that's natural.
The Rhythm and Blues Podcast.
Free your mind.
Welcome to R&B. I'm Shea, Howell, your host and the founder of FAAAM. Many brands and agencies release statements of solidarity with the Black community declaring Black Lives Matter. However, very few have as much insight, equity, and investment in the Black community as McDonald's. Elizabeth Campbell, Senior Director of Marketing, Cultural Engagement, joined me in my virtual living room to chat about McDonald's long-standing relationship with the culture, its increased commitment during this time, and what's next for Black and Positively Golden. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen. Now sit back and take notes. Class is in session. Thank you for joining me on the Rhythm and Blues podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I have today the Senior Director of Marketing, Cultural Engagement for McDonald's, Miss Elizabeth Campbell.
Woo-hoo. Good to be here with you.
Thanks so much. It's good to see your face and talk to you for a second about all that is going on. And there's a lot to try and encapsulate during this time. So the first thing I want to say is congratulations on being named one of Ad Age's 2020 Women to Watch.
Thank you. I am honored to be on the list, so thank you very much. And you're giving me all sorts of good energy, so I just had to put that out there. You got good juju right now, so good.
All right, I'll take it. I'll take that. That's nice. I like to start the podcast with, when was the last time you felt represented?
So I love that question because here's what I am striving to do. I want to make sure that every day that I get up and that I show up, that I am representing myself and representing my family and representing my friends. So I have to say that I feel represented every day because I'm trying to make sure that I'm being unapologetic about who I am and what I stand for and how I go out into the world. So I feel represented every day. But I do have to say that as I look back at women that I admire, who a lot of us have seen out in the media, et cetera, I will say it was probably somebody who made me feel very represented is when I saw the look on Michelle Obama's face on that first day when they announced that her husband had won the presidential, became president of the United States. And the reason being is because the grace that she had to carry to know that she had these two little girls that she was responsible for, this man, Black man that she was helping to uplift, and knowing that the world was also going to be watching her. So I felt represented in watching her go through that presidential, service that they did for the United States, and just seeing how she showed up every single day and the courage that it took to do that and the way she protected her family. So she definitely represented Black women and all of Black women.
Absolutely. In an amazing way. I thought I was over the moon about Becoming the Book.
Yes.
And then the documentary that was on Netflix just completely sold it. It was absolutely everything. Everything.
When I saw Becoming on Netflix, I started crying during the intro. And I was texting my friends like, I'm crying. I'm so proud. And she was like, you haven't even seen the movie or seen the show. Like, but I'm just crying. So yes.
Exactly. Oh, very powerful. Very powerful. And she has a new podcast on Spotify. So I will be checking that out as well. Any and everything they do, I am here for it. They represent us very well. We have to start with the current space and time that we're in. Right? Like this year kind of started off a little challenging. And before the end of the first quarter, we had a global pandemic that changed the landscape of everything for us, the way we interacted with one another, the way we showed up at work, or honestly didn't show up at work, the way we interact with our teams, our families. And then not too long after that, we had to face another pandemic, which for us was not something new, but the attention that it grabbed of everyone who was now paying attention, because there was no sports, there were no additional distractions around us. We were facing, and still are, a racial awakening or reckoning. Some have described it as. How have you been doing?
I would say that I have had my moments, and like everybody, I'm trying to heal from everything that's going on. So for me, I moved into a new job at work, a new position within my company in November of 2019. So, you go away from the holidays and you're like, let me rest up so I can attack this new role. Came back in January, ready to hit it. Was having meetings with one of our new agencies in New York, Wyden and Kennedy. Was in LA at at one of the Essence Black Women of Hollywood events, and I was telling the individuals on my team, "Oh, we're about to make this happen. We're about to set this on fire. We have all this work we want to do." And then, as you mentioned, we were hit with a global pandemic, and so it was a matter of how do you kind of reset yourself from that. But then we were hit with that second wave, in terms of, as you mentioned, the racial unrest. And for me, professionally, I had to remind myself that I still had a job that I needed to do, that I was still trying to do a job. And in my current role, there was a reason that I was in this job. Reason being that it was about, I'm responsible for cultural engagement, but I have a voice right now at the table on which we have COVID that's affecting the minority consumers, and I'm responsible for marketing to them. And then we have the racial unrest, which is affecting them. So right now is my time and my team's time to make sure that we're amplifying the voice so that we can help those consumers who need help, and that we represent their voice in our company and outside of our company. But then on a personal side, you have to deal with the effects of what's going on racially, and as a Black woman, how it affects you and how it affects your family and friends. And I remember the Saturday after George Floyd was killed, I was working on some creative for McDonald's. And working on a Saturday, had to pump it out. And I was seeing flashes on the TV about the protests and rioting and things going on in Chicago. And it took everything I had, because I had to stop and just send a text message out to my family and say, where are you? Because my nieces are in that 20-year-old, 30-year-old age group. Where are you? And you need to get home. Because people don't understand that you have a college degree from DePaul, or that you work in accounting, or that you're a teacher. You are a young Black male or female. I need you to get home. And that, for me, is what made this so real and made this so personal, that I could see how it was affecting people in my family and the potential harm for them that was going to come.
I think, to your point, the hardest part is trying to navigate how you feel, what is going on, and to keep doing the job that you're required to do and care for the people in your life. I started or created a safe space for the other Black women on my team. And one of the things I didn't anticipate, and I think because I'm the more mature of the group, like that's my light way of saying I'm older than everybody else, that I have, I'm a little bit more grounded and comfortable with sharing my truth, and watching the level of vulnerability that they had. And it felt to some degree like being exposed in a way, or being seen in a way that you've never been seen before. Like, it's one thing for you to have the experience, but to see it through the eyes of other people, it looks different. It changes it in a way. And to have to navigate that was something that I didn't anticipate that we would even get here, if I'm honest, that this level of conversation and attention would happen in my lifetime. I said I'm going to write a journal or something, because this could be amazing for my great grandchildren, because there's a lot that has happened in our generation, like a lot. that has happened.
But
So while,
I also think, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I also think that we
oh,
need to make sure that we continue to learn, because my mom is 84 years old. And when all of this happened, I remember, and she's in Michigan, and I'm in Chicago. I remember picking up the phone and call her and say, what do you think about this? Or how are you feeling? Because she's had to live through this before. You know,
mm,
she was alive when Martin Luther King was killed. I was not. You know, she was around when so she's seen all of this before. And to hear it from her voice about how she never thought that we would be at this place again was kind of disheartening for me. And it made me feel like there's a responsibility that I have got to make it better for the next generation to come, because I can't sit there and look at my family, you know, who's going to be around in the next 50 years and tell them that I don't want them to have to go through the same thing that we're going through right now, is what I'm trying to say. So.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think we have a responsibility, and I heard someone describe it, because I'm a Gen Xer. Yes. That we were reaping the benefits of what the civil rights movement meant.
Yep.
And so there was a level of comfortability, if I'm honest, right?
Yep.
Some of us have titles and you know, live in places that during that time we weren't able to live, and can do some different things with our lives and attain some things. And so there was a level, not complete, but a level of comfortability.
Mm-hmm.
And this has shaken all of us in a way that has given us an awakening that there is a level of responsibility, to your point, that we have for everybody that's coming behind us, because we haven't arrived. We haven't arrived.
Correct.
Yeah. There's a debt that we owe to those who have come before us.
I'm saying that, a debt that we owe. Yep. Love it.
It's a debt that we owe. One of the things that happened that I didn't anticipate, not only that we would be having this level of conversation, and that we would not just have a uprising, if you will, and protest from a local standpoint, meaning here in the US, but that it would be global, and that it would have a crossover into corporate America. And it happened so fast.
Yep.
And once the ball started rolling, it was hard to keep track of. I saw this company, I think out of Atlanta, which is like a Black tech company, The Plug, that had a timeline of how brands responded. So the date and the time, and it was so much and so fast. And we initially started with general statements. Mm-hmm. And then it was the surprise of Black Lives Matter being used, and that verbiage was surprising. Yep. And then that kind of became what was expected very quickly. Mm-hmm. And then there were a couple standouts by brands that made real declarations and statements of what was important to them and where they were committing in terms of the movement. And McDonald's was one of those brands. You all made a point not only to just mention George Floyd, because I have reminded quite a few people that that was the tipping point.
Yep.
For what has been transpiring for a very long time that we have watched as a community, but that you also included the names of previous victims of systemic violence. And that's the piece that I saw on social media. I was immediately drawn in by that. Can you talk a little bit about the decision to do that?
And it wasn't a hard decision to make. So as a brand, we knew that we wanted to first address this matter internally, because it affected so many people who work for us. We knew that it was affecting our customers, and not in terms of them coming to McDonald's, but our customers in their own homes and what they believe and their security and safety, and not just the Black customers, but the Hispanic customers, the Asian customers, the white customers. From a humanity perspective, it was affecting everybody. And so when we came together as a team and we worked with one of our agency partners on this, They pushed us. It was Wieden Kennedy out of New York. They pushed us and said, this is the opportunity for McDonald's to have a point of view and to stand up for what you believe in. And there's a way that we can do this. We can put out a commercial that talks about an anthem about how much we care about Black people, et cetera, or we can really do something that has meaning. And we talked about making sure that we recognize the names, as many people as we could that had gone through this or had been killed, murdered, et cetera. But we wanted to make sure that we recognize those individuals. And we wanted to put a face to a name because we wanted to make sure that people heard their names, felt their names, and knew who they were. And so that's how the decision came about. It wasn't about McDonald's. It was about the individuals who had lost their lives. But most importantly, because the piece was called One of Us, it was about acknowledging that George Floyd, any of them could have been one of us. It could have been one of the people who work at our restaurant. It could have been one of the people who work at our corporate office. It could have been one of our owner-operators. It could have been one of our customers. That could have been any of us that was in that situation. And we were recognizing that from a humanity perspective, it was the wrong thing, that it was about inequality, injustice, and racism. And we did not want to stand for that. And so there was a young lady on the team, her name is Heather Woodard. She works on our communications team. She reached out to all of the families that we could to say, we wanted to honor you and call attention to what has happened to your family members. And so due to timing, the ones that you saw, because we got feedback in terms of why isn't Breonna Taylor? We were reaching out to Breonna Taylor's family, and out of respect for her family, remember her birthday was that following weekend. And so we had to push back and let them heal from that and not bother them for a TV commercial, I'm going to say.
Right.
But we reached out to every single one of those families and got their approval to use their name in that spot. And we actually also donated money to the charity of their choice because we wanted to make sure that the legacy that they were trying to leave would be able to go on after this piece. And so it was important for us to mention the names because, again, it was about them representing, it could have been any one of us. And we wanted to make sure that people understood that and that they didn't forget who these people were.
And it absolutely came across that way. Right in step with that, next was the BET Awards.
Yes.
Which came off, I can say without a hitch because I had absolutely nothing to do with it. I'm sure it was so much more than that for them. But it was in a digital format for the first time. And McDonald's made another decision to give the majority of your media buy to Black activists and Black businesses.
So we have a long history of partnering with BET. They actually do something every summer called their BET Experience. And at the end of that weekend is where they celebrate the BET Awards. And so we usually have an activation on site that we participate in. So this year because they were celebrating, I think it was their 20th year anniversary, we wanted to make sure that we were still partnering with BET because they have such a strong voice within the Black community. And so we wanted to make sure that we were celebrating them, but also showing up for them in terms of the work that they were continuing to do to show in the Black community. We thought about, we have a Black and Positively Golden campaign. We've created content that is ongoing and evergreen. And we thought about, should we run that? And we said, no, this is our opportunity to put more action to the statement that we had just released. And so what we did was we approached it in two ways. Number one, we did use part of our Black and Positively Golden branding, and we created a spot that was called Dreams because that was done through Burrell, but we wanted to make sure that spot basically displayed that we were investing in the future, which is children, and that we wanted to make sure that people understood that we were going to continue to support the areas that were going to help the future children grow, which was the Boys and Girls Club. So we saw that was like the foundation of what we did. But then instead of showing that spot over and over and over again within the BET Awards, we decided that we were going to give almost 70+% of our media that we had purchased during that award show to the community. And to, as you mentioned, the Black activists, and it was called Amplifying Their Voices. because we wanted their voices to be heard. We didn't want it to come off as a McDonald's spot. So even if you go back and look at it, it's a very little like legal line on there in white that says sponsored by McDonald's, but it's really, really small. We made it as small as we could because we wanted it to be about the messages that they were sharing and the messages that would help the community in terms of how you could they were providing resources to make their community better, about how they were providing resources to help African-American women get jobs, or just to have a voice in the community. And so that's what we really wanted to make it about in terms of how do we make sure we're amplifying those voices so that people can see that there are real individuals who are trying to make a positive impact within their overall committee. And we shared it on the BET Awards, but then we also took the opportunity to share it in some of the work that we were doing from a social media perspective so that we could continue with that conversation in that way.
So McDonald's has had a long-standing relationship with the Black community. And I'll just insert my little McDonald's story here. So the first brand experience I remember having was with McDonald's. I had to be about 6 years old. There was a commercial called Little Sister. It wasn't a Black commercial, but it depicted the exact dynamic of me and my older brother. And I remember my mom and my brother saying, "Shea, your commercial is on." And I would run to the TV to watch this little girl, watch her brother leave in and out the house. My brother's 9 years older than me. So needless to say, playing with me was not number one on his priority list.
My brother's 2 years older. I get it.
And so I remember feeling like, how do they know that I want him to play with me? Like, how did they figure that out? And I think it was that feeling that kind of became the thread that led me to the career that I have. Like, I wanted for people to have that level of connection to a message and to a brand and to feel seen in that way. And then in the 80s, there was it the 80s? Calvin started working at McDonald's.
90s, yep.
And my first job was at McDonald's, like so many of us. 60 something in Stony Island here in Chicago is where I got my first official job. I did some babysitting before that, but that was my first real job. So the relationship that McDonald's has had with the Black community is a long-standing one. It is a very deep one. And in the middle of all that is transpiring, from COVID to the racial pandemic, is there anything that you all have begun to consider or look at from a brand perspective?
Yeah, I would say you're right. So first of all, you're right. McDonald's has had a long tradition of supporting the communities in which we serve. And that stems from our franchisees, because our franchisees represent the diversity within the world and diversity in the United States. And they're the ones who are on the front street in their communities providing a service for customers. So we need to reflect the communities in which we serve, and it's an honor for us to do that. So as we look at it, I would say that, and an example is that McDonald's has, specifically for African American, we do things such as HBCU tours where we're giving back money to historical Black colleges and universities. We support the NAACP. We are doing all sorts of scholarships through the Thurgood Marshall Scholarship Foundation. So we're always trying to make sure that we're ingrained in the community and that we are giving back in that way. But as it relates to COVID, I would say one of the things that we've tried to remain committed to is that we didn't want to pull back on anything. And the reason that we didn't want to pull back on any of our community support is because we saw the stories, we saw the research, we saw all of the information coming out about how COVID was affecting the minorities and the multicultural community at a higher rate than anyone else. So whether you were African American, Asian American, or Hispanic, it was affecting those populations in different ways, but at a higher rate than anyone else. And we had already been partnering with those communities to invest in them. So now is a time for us to kind of dig in and not pull back. So we've given more money in scholarships. We've made sure that we've continued to support some of the community events. You won't see us outside doing outdoor parades or things of that nature, but we wanted to make sure that that money was repurposed and invested in other areas that would allow us to give back directly in the community. And especially making sure that we help to support education across all of those segments, but also helping to support children as they're trying to rebound and trying to grow. So those are some areas that were very important for us that we continue to support.
The long-standing relationship that you all have had and the level of development that you all have found over the last few decades with the Black community could actually serve as more than a case study, but a pathway for so many brands who recently realized that this is a level of investment that is necessary, and that are now making the commitment and developing the plans to figure out how they can better serve the Black community. What would you say or offer to these brands as they are preparing to dive in? What do they need to know?
That it is not just a one-time hit. You can't do the investment now and then walk away and think that you have invested in the community and that you have partnered with the community. This is about building a long-term relationship. McDonald's has done a scholarship called HACER for Hispanic high school students for more than 30 years, where we have given scholarships to high school students to go to college, or for Hispanic students to go to college. But then also we have, most people are familiar with Black and Positively Golden, the campaign that talks about Black excellence that we started last year, specifically targeted to the African-American consumer segment. But that campaign actually started more than 16 years ago under 365 Black. And it was about how we were deeply rooted in the community and we wanted to make sure that we were giving back to the community. We just wanted to make sure we refreshed it, that we kept it more current, and that we could actually start to show action and more actionable things in terms of what we're doing. So my advice to companies is that this is not a sprint. It is not something that you can do overnight. You've got to make sure that you are investing for the long term, but then also that you're doing it from a place of empathy and passion. So it's not, McDonald's doesn't do things in the community because we're trying to drive incremental sales. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. We have been invited into these communities, and our restaurants are there. And so we can't just show up and not give back. We've got to make sure that we're helping the communities in which we serve, because those are the individuals who are going to come and work in our restaurants. Those are the individuals who are going to grow up and one day become franchisees in our restaurants, or they may even become the CEO of McDonald's. And so we need to make sure that we're helping them now and making sure that they stay strong so that whether they work at McDonald's or some other place, they have the tools and the passions that they need to be successful. But we've got to do it in an authentic way. And I think that's the struggle that most brands have, is that finding that authenticity and doing it in a way that's natural for them.
Yes. So in terms of an investment, what does your African-American team or resources in terms of support, how many people support the effort that you all have in the African-American community?
Oh, wow. So I can't tell you exact numbers, but I can tell you various teams that support. And the reason I can't tell you exact numbers is because I'd have to calculate it really fast. But I can tell you the different teams that support. So I work in marketing, and I manage a team called Cultural Engagement, of which multicultural marketing sits in that group. But I work across the marketing organization with individuals who help to support from a cross-functional area. So whether it's our business insights, consumer insights, and even our media teams, there are individuals on those teams that are helping within the multicultural segment so that we can make sure that we are building the right business plans for growth. I would also say that across the McDonald's organization, we have diversity and inclusion, which is not only US based, but a global base that looks at the way McDonald's shows up in communities. So when you see us at an Urban League gala or at an Urban League session where we're doing a training session, that's coming through our diversity and inclusion team. And they're purely they're dedicated to making sure that they can support the communities in which we serve as well. And in addition to that, we have what I would say our employee business network. And most people forget about those. But we have something called the McDonald's African American Committee, which is our employee business network, which is employees supporting passions that we have and how do we help each other grow. And within that organization, we also do volunteering within the African American community because we want to make sure that we are showing up for our communities in which we all grew up in. So we definitely decide to give back from that area as well. So lots of different fingers touching the community and touching multicultural, I would say, marketing.
Yeah, I think that's awesome and provides some additional insight into not only how your machine works, but for brands that are just starting or considering what the investment might be and or look like, what they can consider and model, if you will, after to make sure that their employees and their consumers are supported as they move forward.
Yeah, and I always say, like from a multicultural perspective, in terms of dedicated multicultural support and marketing, I have 3 individuals who report to me who work in multicultural. So that's 4 of us in totality that are dedicated. But I always say to our leadership team, if you're expecting the 4 of us to be the only drivers in the organization for multicultural marketing, then we will lose. Because I need support from our chief marketing officer, our US president, our CEO, and all of the C-suite people to make sure that they believe in this and that they are supporting it, because it can't just be led by only 4 people. And that's where I think the historical difference has been for McDonald's, is that we've always had that support in one way or another in terms of driving forward the initiatives within the various segments.
So you referenced the Black and Positively Golden that launched last year. Talk a little bit more about all that is in, or I shouldn't say all, because I'm sure there's more than a lot, but give a summary of what the campaign includes.
Yep. So Black and Positively. So for 16 years, I would say that we've had a dedicated campaign that targeted the African American consumer segment. It started off as 365 Black. It was about being deeply rooted in the community. Last year it was refreshed and it became Black and Positively Golden. And it was about making sure that we continue to support the community, making sure that we continue to support entrepreneurialism. It was about making sure that McDonald's showed up in a positive way and could show positive images of Black people. And so as we continue to evolve that campaign, we will continue to have a Black and Positively Golden initiative and campaign. But right now, what we're focused on is how do we make sure that we have action and that we are actually demonstrating that we listen for a year and we'll continue to listen. But then now, how do we make sure that we are truly having action that can affect and positively shape the communities in which we're in? So that's where you see us giving more money back to the historical Black colleges and universities, where we're investing more in those areas. You see us investing within Girls United in terms of trying to put out positive images within the Essence platform of Girls United. So those are various areas where we're just going to be more active and demonstrating how McDonald's will show up in our various communities as we move forward.
Is there something in particular that you all have coming up? I know the summer put a kibosh on everything from Essence Fest to every parade, with all the places that you plan to activate and be present and be seen and launch. We're all just in the house. But is there something in particular that you all have been able to adapt for the campaign, or something that might be coming up for the next, 5 months of the year?
Yes. Yes, it has put a strain on everything. Remember, I told you I came to this position, I was like, oh, I'm so excited. We're going to be able to do all of these things. So yes, it's been stifled just a little bit. But so here's what we've done. We've tried to make sure that we continue to partner with the organizations who we've had a long history of partnering with because of the way that they are invested in the community. So such as Essence, such as historical Black colleges and universities. We also have a tour that we've done in the past called the Inspiration Celebration Gospel Tour. So all of those things we are continuing to do. We've just got to make sure that they're being done from a virtual standpoint, because we were committed to making sure that we still showed up in the community but showed up in a way that was going to be safe for the people who wanted to attend, but also safe for our employees. So everything that we're doing is virtual. You will still see us do the Inspiration Celebration Gospel Tour. There'll be news coming out about that, but it will be done virtually. We also are partnering to see how we could help students who are at historical Black colleges and universities celebrate homecoming, because that has been a really big thing over the past couple of years. So while students may not be in school, or they may be doing school virtually, what are ways that we could still participate in homecoming and celebrating them and actually supporting them through scholarships? So those are things that you will see coming up as we look forward to the second half of Black and Positively Golden.
That is really exciting. I am so looking forward to that. So I think the last and final question is always the name of the podcast is Rhythm and Blues. We celebrate the rhythm and analyze the blues of Black culture through the lens of marketing and advertising. So I always ask, what is in your playlist? It doesn't have to be R&B, but what have you been listening to? I have gotten some very interesting answers, by the way. So feel free.
Okay, so right now, what's in my playlist, I will tell you, if anybody is not listening, and this is not actually a playlist, this is live. If you are not listening to D-Nice, you need to listen to D-Nice. When he is DJing live, he just gives you your whole life. You can find any song that you love because he hits the spot and you're like, This is wonderful. So I would say he is on constant rotation, even to the point where I have woken up at 6 a.m. in the morning and he's ending his set and I'm listening to him then. And I'm like, okay, this is good. This is good. Ready to go off to virtual work. So I would say that's one thing that's on my playlist. And then for me, what I have a tendency to do is that I am an Apple Music person, where I would put on any of their I would say, playlists or DJs, and I will listen to that all the time. So I love Ebro. He's a DJ out of New York, but he also does something on Apple Music. He is one of my favorites that I listen to all the time. And then there's also one called Soul Selection, where it just plays. It's by Joe K is the DJ who does it. But I just love listening to the various types of music that he does, because he can do Afro beats, he can do R&B, he will do whatever, and it soothes me as I'm trying to do my work or clean my house. So those are a couple of things that I listen to.
Nice. So before we go, I'd like for you to share where everyone can find Black and Positively Golden on whatever platforms, or we all know where to find McDonald's. Yeah. Mickey D's, as my mom still calls it. Mickey D's.
Yes, that is what I call it too. So if you would like to find out more about Black and Positively Golden, or just see how McDonald's is showing up in the community, you can reach us on Instagram. And on Instagram, it's called @WeAreGolden. And that's the handle that we go under, where we share information about Black excellence in the community. So excited for you to go and check that out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad that you're doing well. And thank you again for joining me, Miss Elizabeth Campbell.
Thank you. And I'm very proud of you. You are doing a wonderful thing. Love your spirit. Love what you are doing. So you keep doing it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.